My 29th birthday passed like a spam email ignored and deleted. There were no calls, no texts, and not a single word from my own parents. But exactly 6 hours later, when a $95,000 Porsche parked in front of their house and hit Facebook, my phone finally rang. They screamed like I had committed a felony. They did not realize I had not just bought a car, I had brought a financial autopsy of their golden child. My name is Violet Jenkins, and today was my 29th birthday. In the high-stakes world of Chicago finance where I work as a senior risk strategist, numbers usually tell a story that makes sense. Inputs match outputs. Risks are calculated against rewards. But in the ledger of my family life, the math had stopped adding up a long time ago. I sat at my desk on the 42nd floor of the Stonebridge Meridian Group building, watching the gray clouds roll over Lake Michigan. My phone lay face up on the mahogany veneer, silent and black. It had been silent since I woke up at 6 a.m. I had checked it while brushing my teeth. I had checked it while brewing my coffee. I had checked it at every red light on my commute into the city. Nothing. No calls, no texts, not even a generic gif of a cake from the family group chat. It was strange how silence could be so loud. It hummed in my ears, drowning out the low murmur of the trading floor outside my glass walls. My colleagues had remembered, Monica Hale, my mentor and the closest thing I had to a work mother, had left a vanilla cupcake on my desk before I even arrived. My LinkedIn notifications were blowing up with professional well wishes. But the people who had brought me into this world, they were ghosts. I told myself it did not matter. I told myself I was a grown woman, nearly 30, and I did not need a nursery rhyme sung to me over the phone to feel validated. But the heart is a stupid, sentimental organ that refuses to read spreadsheets. At 12:30 in the afternoon, I took my lunch break. I did not go out. Instead, I sat there and made the mistake of opening Facebook. I usually avoided the platform because it was a curated museum of other people's fake happiness. But today, I scrolled, and there it was. The algorithm, cruel and efficient, pushed a post from my mother, Marianne, right to the top of my feed. It had been posted 2 hours ago. While I was sitting in a risk assessment meeting waiting for my phone to buzz, my mother had been carefully selecting filters. The photo was of Logan, my younger brother. He was standing in front of a brick wall that looked vaguely industrial and hip, wearing a blazer over a t-shirt, looking off into the middle distance like he was pondering the cure for cancer. The caption read, "So incredibly proud of our golden boy Logan is revolutionizing the future of wellness and technology. A true visionary. We love you so much." I stared at the screen. My finger hovered over the like button, trembling slightly, before I pulled it back as if the glass were hot. There was no mention of me. No happy birthday. Violet? No. Sorry we are busy, but we love you. Just a shrine to Logan and his latest buzzword-filled venture that had yet to produce a single dollar of actual revenue. This was the 3rd year in a row. On my 27th birthday. They had forgotten because Logan had a crucial pitch competition in Austin. They called me 2 days late, breathless, talking only about how the judges didn't get Logan's genius. On my 28th birthday, they claimed they were too distraught to call because Logan had come down with a bad flu and needed soup and care. He was 25 years old at the time, and now, for my 29th, they simply had better things to do than acknowledge the daughter who never asked them for anything. I felt a cold knot tighten in my stomach. It was not anger, exactly. Anger is hot. It burns and lashes out. This was something colder. It was the icy realization of my own market value in their eyes. I was the reliable bond, boring and yielding steady returns, safely ignored because I would never default. Logan was the volatile cryptocurrency, crashing and burning, yet they poured every ounce of emotional and financial capital into him, hoping for a moonshot that never came. Then, my email pinged. I looked away from Facebook and clicked on the notification from the payroll department. The subject line was simple Q4 Performance Bonus Project Lead Incentive. I opened it. I blinked. I leaned closer to the screen. The number was staggering. It was the kind of number that legitimized the 60-hour weeks, the missed dates, the stress headaches, and the ruthless dedication I gave to this job. It was a transfer notification. The funds had already cleared. I looked at that number's 6 figures of liquid validation, and then I looked back at the picture of Logan in his blazer, playing CEO. I did not cry. I did not pick up the phone to call my mother and beg for a scrap of attention. I did not text my father, Gary, to remind him what day it was. The time for begging was over. I opened the Notes app on my phone. My fingers flew across the virtual keyboard, typing a single line. They will not be able to scroll past this. I closed my laptop. I grabbed my purse. I walked out of my office, past Monica's desk. "Heading out for a long lunch?" Monica asked, eyeing the set of my jaw. "I have an errand," I said. "A heavy one." "Everything okay?" "Better than okay," I replied. "I am going to balance the books." I drove out to the suburbs. This was not a fugue state. I was not hyperventilating. My heart rate was a steady 65 beats per minute. I had been researching this purchase for 6 months. I knew the depreciation curves. I knew the insurance premiums. I knew the maintenance schedules. I had the spreadsheet saved on my personal drive. I had just never pulled the trigger because I was responsible Violet, the girl who saved, the girl who invested in index funds, the girl who did not make waves, but responsible Violet was invisible. I pulled into the dealership lot. The sign above the glass doors gleamed in the afternoon sun. I parked my sensible, 5-year-old sedan next to a row of German engineering that looked like it was moving even when standing still. A salesman approached me. He was young, slick, and his eyes flicked over my business casual attire, doing a quick calculation of his own. He did not see a buyer. He saw a tire kicker. "Can I help you find something, Miss?" he asked, his tone polite but dismissive. "I am here for the 911 Carrera S," I said, my voice flat. "The gentian blue metallic. I know you have it in stock. I saw the inventory update this morning." His eyebrows lifted. "That is a serious car. Do you want to sit in it?" "I want to buy it," I said. "Cash, today. If you can get the paperwork done in 45 minutes, I will not haggle on the destination fee." The shift in his demeanor was instantaneous. 40 minutes later, I was signing the final document. The total came to $95,000 and change. After taxes and fees, I wrote the check with a steady hand. It was a massive amount of money, yes, but looking at the balance remaining in my account on my banking app, I knew I was safe. I could afford this. I had earned this. This was not just a car. It was a metallic financial statement. It was a 2-ton, 4-wheel Declaration of Independence. I drove it off the lot. The engine growled behind me, a deep, throaty sound that vibrated through the steering wheel and into my palms. It felt like power. It felt like control. I drove back toward the city, the skyline rising up to meet me. The sun was beginning to set, painting the glass towers in shades of violet and gold. I pulled over at a scenic overlook near the planetarium, a spot where the entire city stretched out behind you like a backdrop. I got out. The wind whipped my hair across my face. The car looked menacing and beautiful under the streetlights that were just flickering on. It shone like a jewel. I took my phone out. I did not use a filter. I did not need one. The reality was sharp enough. I framed the shot, the curve of the fender, the Porsche emblem, and the Chicago skyline blurring in the distance. I opened Facebook. I uploaded the photo. For the caption, I kept it minimal. I did not tag my parents. I did not mention Logan. Happy birthday to me. No favors. Just work. I hit post. Then, I got back in the car, turned up the music, and drove home to my apartment in the West Loop. For the first hour, there was the usual dopamine rush of likes from friends and coworkers. Monica commented, "Hell yes. You earned every bolt of that machine." My college roommate commented queen behavior, but from the Jenkins household silence. I sat on my couch, a glass of wine in hand, watching the notifications. 1 hour passed, 2 hours. I imagined them at home in their comfortable suburban living room, Mom scrolling on her iPad while the TV played in the background. Dad reading his news feed. I imagined the moment the algorithm fed them my post. I imagined the confusion first. Is that Violet's car? No, it can't be. That is a $95,000 car. Then the realization, wait, it is her birthday. Then the horror. She has that kind of money. Why didn't we know? Why didn't she tell us? And finally, the panic. It took exactly 3 hours and 12 minutes for the silence to break. My phone rang. The screen lit up with the word Dad. I let it ring 3 times before picking up. I took a sip of wine. Hello? I said, my voice calm. Violet? My father's voice boomed. He was not using his happy fatherly tone. He was using the tone he used when I was a teenager and had come home 5 minutes past curfew. It was a mix of anger and disbelief. Hi, Dad. Thank you for calling. I assumed you guys were busy. He ignored the passive aggressiveness. I just saw your post. Your mother is in tears. Violet, tears. Why is Mom crying? I asked, swirling the wine in my glass. Did she not like the color? Don't get smart with me, he snapped. What the hell were you thinking, a Porsche? Do you have any idea how that looks? We are a modest family. We don't go around flaunting wealth like criminals. I bought a car, Dad. I didn't rob a bank. I worked for it. It is my birthday. Remember? I know what day it is, he shouted, though his defensiveness betrayed him. But this display, it is vulgar. Violet, you are throwing money away on a toy while your brother is out there grinding, trying to build something real, and you are just vunging money around. Vunging. He was so angry he was making up words. Or maybe he meant flaunting. It didn't matter. It is my money, I said. I can burn it in a bonfire if I want to. It is disrespectful, he countered. To the family, to the values we raised you with. People are going to talk. They are going to think you are into something illegal, or that you are selfish. Selfish? I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Because I bought myself a gift after you forgot my existence for the 3rd year in a row. There was a pause on the line. I could hear him breathing heavily. I could hear my mother sobbing in the background, a theatrical, wailing sound that she reserved for moments when she wanted to guilt-trip someone. We did not forget, Dad lied. We were planning to call you tonight, but then we see this monstrosity on the internet. You have humiliated us. Violet, I humiliated you by being successful. You humiliated us by being reckless, he roared. Where did you get that kind of money? Is that debt? Did you take out a loan? Tell me you didn't sign a high-interest loan. No loan, I said. Paid in full. The silence that followed was heavy. It was the silence of a man realizing he had lost the upper hand. But Gary Jenkins did not like losing control. We need to talk, he said, his voice dropping to a low, commanding register. This isn't a conversation for the phone. There are things going on, things you don't understand about how this family operates. I think I understand perfectly, I said. No, you don't, he cut me off. You are coming home, tomorrow, 7 p.m., family meeting, and I expect you to have a damn good explanation for this behavior. A family meeting, I repeated. For what? To discuss your future, he said, and how you are going to fix the damage you just caused. He hung up before I could answer. I lowered the phone and looked at the black screen. A family meeting, 7 p.m. The last time we had a family meeting, it was to discuss why I needed to give up my larger bedroom so Logan could have more space for his projects. I stood up and walked to the window of my apartment. Down on the street, parked under a streetlight. My new car gleamed in the darkness. They were scared. I could hear it in his voice. They were not scared for me. They were scared of me. They were scared of the money. I thought about the spreadsheet I had built over the last 2 years. The one tracking every transfer, every loan, every bailout they had sent to Logan. They want an explanation, I whispered to the empty room. I went to my desk and opened my laptop. I clicked on the folder labeled Facts. Okay, Dad, I said. I will bring an explanation. To understand why I bought the Porsche, and why my father's demand for a family meeting made my blood run cold. You have to go back to last Thanksgiving. That was the day the blindfold didn't just slip. It was ripped off my face and burned in the centerpiece candle. I was standing in the kitchen of my parents' house in the suburbs of Illinois. It is a house that screams upper-middle-class stability, beige siding, manicured lawn, a wreath on the door that changes with the seasons like clockwork. Inside, it smelled of sage, roasted turkey, and the specific brand of lemon furniture polish my mother, Marianne, has used since 1999. I had been there since 10 in the morning, peeling potatoes, chopping celery, and listening to my mother critique my chopping technique. "You are cutting them too thick, Violet," she said, hovering over my shoulder with a glass of Chardonnay in her hand. "They won't cook through. Honestly, do you cook at all in the city, or is it just takeout every night?" "I cook plenty, Mom," I said, slicing the celery thinner. "And I have been up since 6 finishing a report for the London office, so I am running on caffeine." She sighed, a sound that implied my career was a cute hobby that unfortunately took up too much of my time. "Well, try to look a little more alive before the guests arrive. You have dark circles under your eyes. Maybe put on some concealer." At 2 in the afternoon, the guests arrived, aunts, uncles, cousins, the usual tribunal of judgment, and then, 45 minutes late, Logan made his entrance. He did not just walk in, he arrived. He threw the front door open, letting a gust of cold November air sweep through the hallway, and shouted a greeting that bounced off the vaulted ceiling. He was wearing a slim-fit blazer over a graphic t-shirt, distressed jeans that probably cost more than my first car, and limited edition sneakers. "Sorry I am late," he announced, hugging Mom, who practically melted into his arms. "Had a call with a potential partner in San Francisco. You know how it is. The grind never stops." He did not apologize to me for leaving me to do all the prep work. He just winked and tossed his keys on the counter. "Hey, Vi, still crunching numbers. Still paying taxes. Logan," I said, but my voice was drowned out by Dad emerging from the living room. "There he is," Gary Jenkins boomed, clapping Logan on the back. "The man of the hour. How did the call go?" "Did you give them the pitch?" "Crushed it," Logan said, grabbing a beer from the fridge. "They are super interested in the synergy between our AI interface and the wellness vertical. It is a total paradigm shift. We are disrupting the meditation space." I watched them. I watched my father's eyes light up. I watched my mother look at him with a mixture of awe and adoration. They looked at him like he was Steve Jobs returning from the wilderness. We sat down to dinner. The table was set with the good china. Logan sat at the head, displacing Dad, who happily took the side seat so his son could hold court. For the first 20 minutes, the conversation was the Logan show. He talked, but he said absolutely nothing. It was a word salad of tech buzzwords. He spoke of scalability and bandwidth and leveraging assets. He talked about his team, which I knew for a fact consisted of him and a guy named Kyle who lived in a basement. He talked about pre-seed valuation without ever mentioning a dollar amount. "It is all about the user journey," Logan said, gesturing with a turkey leg. "We are not just building an app, we are building an ecosystem." "Incredible," my aunt whispered. "He is so smart. Marianne, you must be so proud." "We are," Mom said, beaming. "He is the future." Then there was a lull. My uncle, trying to be polite, turned to me. "So, Violet," he said, "how is work at what is it called, Stonebridge?" "Stonebridge Meridian," I corrected gently. "It is going well. Actually, we had a crazy week. I caught a flaw in a risk model for a huge merger. If we had gone through with it, the client would have lost about $40 million. I had to restructure the entire deal over the weekend. It was intense, but we saved the portfolio." I felt a small spark of pride as I said it. It was a tangible, massive win. I had saved $40 million. I had done real work with real consequences. The table went quiet for a second. "$40 million, my uncle said, impressed. That is no joke. I looked at my parents, waiting for a nod, a smile, a good job. Mom frowned slightly. You look tired, honey. No wonder you have those bags under your eyes. Is it worth it? All that stress? Dad cleared his throat. Corporate life is a grinder. Violet, you have to be careful you don't burn out. You don't want to wake up at 40 and realize you missed your life staring at spreadsheets. Then, without missing a beat, Dad turned back to Logan. Son, tell us about this conference in Miami you were talking about, the one with the venture capitalists. I felt the air leave my lungs. It was not just a dismissal, it was an erasure. My reality saving $40 million was boring to them. It was stressful. It was corporate. It lacked the glitter. But Logan's fantasy, Logan's imaginary ecosystem, that was intoxicating. I realized then that my parents were addicts. They were addicted to the idea of success, not the work required to achieve it. My steady, high-paying job was like a savings bond safe, reliable, and utterly unsexy. Logan was a lottery ticket. He was a long shot. And the dopamine hit they got from imagining he might win big was worth more to them than the reality of what I actually did. I stabbed a piece of broccoli with my fork. I stopped talking. I let the Logan show continue. Later that evening, after dessert, the dynamic shifted from annoying to suspicious. Logan was showing photos on his phone to a circle of relatives. This is the incubator I was accepted into, he said, swiping through pictures of a sleek, industrial chic office space with neon lights, beanbag chairs, and an espresso bar. It is totally exclusive. Only the top 1% of founders get in. We have access to mentors who built unicorns. He showed a photo of himself shaking hands with a man in a vest. That is my mentor, David. Guy is a legend. I was standing near the doorway, nursing a glass of wine, when a friend of my cousin, a guy named Eric, who worked in software sales, leaned over to me. Your brother is in the Nexus program, Eric asked quietly. I guess so, I said. Is it a big deal? Eric smirked. It was not a nice smirk. It is a big deal if you like lighting money on fire. That is not a real incubator. Violet, real incubators pay you, or they take equity in exchange for capital. The Nexus is a pay-to-play scheme. You pay them something like $5,000 a month for the desk and the mentorship, plus extra for the networking events. It is basically a country club for people who want to play CEO. I stared at him. Wait, you pay them? Oh yeah, Eric said, taking a sip of his beer. It is for rich kids whose parents want to tell their friends their kid is a founder. They accept anyone whose check clears. That guy David. He is a motivational speaker, not a tech mogul. He charges $500 for a 30-minute coffee chat. The glass in my hand felt suddenly very fragile. I looked across the room at Logan. He was laughing, basking in the adoration of my parents. And the investors, I asked Eric. The pitch meetings. Staged, Eric said ruthlessly. They set up pitch nights where you present to a room of people, but half of them are other students in the program, and the other half are consultants selling services. No one is writing checks there. Violet. They are writing invoices. I thanked Eric and walked away. I felt sick. I went into the kitchen where my dad was pouring himself a second scotch. He looked flushed and happy. Great night, huh? He said. Your brother is really going places. Dad, I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. How is Logan paying for that office space, the incubator? Dad stiffened. The happy veneer cracked just a fraction. He has savings, and well, we help him out a bit, just until his Series A funding comes through. You know how startups are. You have to burn cash to grow. How much is a little bit? I asked. It is an investment, Violet, he said sharply. Don't worry about it. We are betting on the jockey, not the horse. Logan has the vision. I went to the bathroom and locked the door. I sat on the edge of the tub and pulled out my phone. I logged into my banking app. Not to check my balance, but to check the history of a joint account I still technically had access to, an old emergency fund my parents had set up when I was in college. I had not used it in years, but my name was still on it. I scrolled back. November 1st. Transfer out. $1,950. October 1st. Transfer out $1,950. September 1st. Transfer out. $1,950. It was rhythmic. It was a heartbeat. Then I saw the bigger hits. August 15th. Transfer out. $4,000. Memo Miami Conference. July 10th. Transfer out $2,500. Memo PR. Consultant. I did the math in my head. In just the last 6 months, they had funneled over $15,000 out of that account alone, and that was just the account I could see. I thought about 2 years ago, when I had asked them for a $20,000 loan to help with the down payment on my condo. I had a repayment plan. I had interest calculated. I had treated it like a business transaction. They had said no. It is important for you to stand on your own 2 feet, Violet, Dad had said then. Handouts make you weak. We want you to appreciate the value of $1. I sat in that bathroom, surrounded by the smell of potpourri, and I realized the truth. It was not about money. It was about the narrative. I was the steady background character. I was expected to be self-sufficient so they could divert all their resources to the protagonist. My struggles were character building. Logan's struggles were crises that needed immediate financial intervention. They were paying for his delusion. They were paying $5,000 a month so he could play dress-up in a co-working space and they could brag to their friends about their son, the CEO. I washed my hands. I looked at myself in the mirror. My eyes were cold. I walked back out into the living room. Logan was still talking. And once we hit critical mass, he was saying, the revenue will take care of itself. Amazing, Mom said. Just amazing. Hey, Mom, I said, cutting through the noise. I have to go. I have an early morning. Oh, she said, looking disappointed that I was interrupting the flow. Already. But we haven't even had pie. I am full, I said. I looked at Logan. He grinned at me. A cocky, oblivious grin. He had no idea I knew. He had no idea that his investors were actually a retired couple in the suburbs who were draining their savings to keep his ego inflated. Drive safe, Vi, Logan said. Keep crunching those numbers. I will, I said. And Logan, good luck with the incubator. I hear the coffee there is expensive. His smile faltered for a millisecond, just a twitch at the corner of his mouth. I walked out to my car, my sensible, 5-year-old sedan. I sat in the dark driveway for a long time. That Thanksgiving was the night I stopped seeking their approval. It was the night I started building the spreadsheet. I drove home in silence, but my mind was loud. I began to categorize every interaction, every slip of the tongue, every time Dad complained about money versus every time Logan posted a picture of a bottle service table. I wasn't jealous of the money. I had my own money. I was furious at the lie. And now, almost a year later, sitting in my apartment with my Porsche parked outside, I knew exactly what that family meeting was going to be. They weren't angry that I spent $95,000. They were terrified. They were terrified because if I had $95,000 to spend on a car, it meant I had resources. And if I had resources, they were going to wonder why I wasn't sharing them with the future. But more than that, the Porsche shattered the narrative. The background character had just walked onto center stage wearing a diamond gown. It made Logan's rented lifestyle look cheap. It made their investment look foolish. I closed the fax folder on my laptop. The memory of that Thanksgiving dinner burned in my chest, hot and suffocating. You want a meeting, I whispered. I will give you a presentation. The decision to buy the Porsche was not born from a moment of madness. It was born from a spreadsheet. Most people assume that family secrets are buried in diaries or whispered in hushed tones behind closed doors. But in my experience as a risk strategist, I know the truth. Secrets are not whispered. They are transacted. They hide in plain sight, camouflaged as line items in bank statements, buried under vague merchant codes, and obscured by the sheer volume of daily commerce. I did not need to hack my parents' bank accounts to know they were bleeding money. I did not need to guess their passwords or answer security questions about my mother's maiden name or the name of my first pet. I simply needed to remember a Saturday afternoon 3 years ago when my father, frustrated by a stack of paper envelopes, asked me to digitize his life. "I am drowning in paper, Violet," he had complained. "Set me up with that paperless billing thing." I had obliged. I set up their online banking portal, linked their checking and savings accounts, and crucially, I set the notification email address to a shared family administrative account that I had created for them because they were notorious for losing passwords. I had view-only access to ensure they didn't accidentally wire their retirement funds to a Nigerian prince. Over time, they forgot I had access, but the automated monthly statement alerts kept arriving in that inbox, regular as a heartbeat. Tonight, hours before the family meeting, I sat at my desk with 3 monitors glowing in the dark. I was not a daughter anymore. I was a forensic accountant conducting an audit on a failing enterprise. I opened the folder I had been compiling for months. The investigation began with a pattern. In my line of work, we are trained to look for anomalies, but sometimes the most dangerous risk is the consistency. It was a single number $1,950, every single month, on the 1st. A transfer of $1,950 left my parents' primary checking account. The recipient field was blank, usually indicating a direct wire or a Zelle transfer to a private individual. But the user memo always read the same thing: support. It was too specific to be a utility bill, it was too high to be a car payment for a vehicle they owned, and it was too consistent to be a random gift. I pulled up the data from the last 26 months. I entered the figure into my master spreadsheet: $1,950 multiplied by 26, $50,700. That was the baseline. That was the rent for Logan's luxury loft in the trendy River North District, a place he claimed he was sharing with other founders to maximize creative collision. In reality, the market rate for a one-bedroom in that building was exactly $1,950. My parents were paying his entire rent, every dime of it, but the rent was just the foundation of the iceberg. I cross-referenced the dates of the larger, irregular withdrawals against Logan's social media footprint. This was where the data became damning. On February 12th of last year, a withdrawal of $3,200 appeared. The memo read, "SXSW Conference." I pulled up Logan's Instagram from that week. There was a photo of him holding a VIP badge, wearing sunglasses, standing in front of a stage in Austin, Texas. Caption, "Investing in myself. Networking with the Titans." He wasn't investing in himself. Gary and Marianne Jenkins were investing in his vacation. On May 4th, a debit of $4,500. Memo consulting fee. Nexus. This was the pay-to-play incubator Eric had told me about at Thanksgiving. My parents weren't just paying for his rent. They were paying his tuition for a school that didn't exist. They were buying him the costume of a CEO. I continued to input the data, my fingers flying across the number pad: plane tickets to San Francisco, a branding package for a website that was still a coming soon page, a lease payment for a high-end laptop, a recurring subscription for LinkedIn Premium, and various AI tools that Logan claimed were essential for his workflow. I tallied the incidental transfers, the ones labeled groceries or car repair or simply help. These were the panic transfers. The ones sent at 11 p.m. on a Tuesday because Logan had likely overdrawn his account buying drinks for potential investors who never materialized. I hit the sum function on the spreadsheet. The total figure for the last 2 years sat in the bottom right corner of the screen, bold and black, $92,415.62. I stared at the number. The room was silent, save for the hum of my computer tower. $92,000. That was not help. That was not support. That was a salary. My parents were employing my brother to be a failure. The coldness in my chest spread to my limbs. It wasn't the money itself that made me want to scream. It was the context. It was the memory of a conversation I had with my father 2 years ago, sitting in a coffee shop in the Loop. I had found a small condo in a developing neighborhood. It was a fixer-upper, but it was mine. I had the income to support the mortgage, but I was short on the 20% down payment to avoid the private mortgage insurance. I had asked them for a loan, not a gift, a loan. I had brought a printed amortization schedule showing exactly how I would pay them back with 3% interest over 5 years. I requested $20,000. My father had looked at my proposal, taken a sip of his black coffee, and slid the paper back to me. "We are proud of you, Violet," he had said, his voice dripping with that patronizing suburban wisdom. "But if we give you this money, we are robbing you of the satisfaction of earning it yourself. Struggle is what builds character. You are strong. You don't need a crutch. Independence is the greatest gift we can give you." I had believed him. I had felt ashamed for even asking. I had worked overtime for 14 months, eating ramen and skipping vacations, to save that money myself. I wore my struggle like a badge of honor, thinking I was making them proud. But looking at this spreadsheet, I realized the truth. They didn't want me to have character. They wanted me to be low maintenance. In the Jenkins family economy, silence was a tax, and incompetence was a subsidized asset. I was being taxed for my stability, because I never cried wolf, because I never had a crisis, because I paid my own bills and remembered their birthdays. I was invisible. I was the asset that required no maintenance, so they deferred it indefinitely. Logan, on the other hand, was a liability. And in their twisted logic, liabilities had to be serviced first to prevent default. He got the capital because he was the squeaky wheel. He got the glory because his potential was more exciting than my actual, boring success. They had lectured me about the value of $1 while they were shoveling nearly $100,000 into a furnace called Logan. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. I wiped it away angrily. This was not the time for tears. This was the time for documentation. I began to compile the evidence. I took screenshots of the bank transfers. I downloaded the PDF statements. I side-by-side pasted them with Logan's Facebook and Instagram posts, creating a timeline that was impossible to refute. Transfer. June 10th, $800. Memo Logan. Car in this. Post June 11th, Logan posing with a bottle of Grey Goose vodka. Caption, Founder's Dinner. We eat what we kill. He wasn't killing anything. He was eating his parents' retirement. I went a step further. I dug into the emails from the incubator program that had been forwarded to the family admin account emails my parents had likely never read in detail. I found the fine print for the Nexus program. It stated clearly in the terms of service fees are non-refundable. Mentorship hours are subject to availability. The Nexus group makes no guarantee of funding or equity placement. It was a scam, a legal scam, but a scam nonetheless, and my parents were the mark. I organized everything into a single digital dossier. I named the folder Facts. I encrypted it. I set the password to the one word they would never guess, the one thing they had denied me for years: visibility. I sat back in my chair and looked at the clock. It was 3 a.m. Suddenly, the $95,000 Porsche parked outside didn't feel like a luxury car anymore. It felt like a balancing entry. When I bought that car, my father had screamed that I was vunging money. He had called me reckless, but according to my spreadsheet, I had spent almost exactly the same amount on a tangible asset with resale value as they had spent on Logan's ego. My car was made of steel and leather and German engineering. Their investment was made of hot air and Instagram filters. I closed my laptop. The logic was sharp as a knife in my mind. The Porsche wasn't revenge. It was simply the first time in my life I had decided to allocate family resources fairly. If they wanted a meeting to discuss finances, they were going to get one, but they were expecting a daughter who would apologize for buying a toy. What they were going to get was a senior risk strategist presenting a quarterly report on their catastrophic mismanagement of funds. I stood up and walked to the window, looking down at the street. The city was asleep, but I was wide awake. The hurt was still there, buried deep, but it was covered now by a layer of cold, hard armor. "See you at 7 p.m., I whispered to the glass. "Bring your calculator." The morning of the family meeting, I walked into Monica Hale's office at 8:15 sharp. I did not knock. I simply walked in, placed 2 large coffees on her glass desk, and sat down in the leather guest chair. Monica, a woman who wore tailored suits as if they were armor and regarded emotions as inefficient data points, didn't even look up from her monitor. "You are wearing last season's blazer," she said, typing rapidly, "and you have the specific manic energy of someone who is either about to close a billion-dollar deal or commit arson. Which is it?" "I bought a Porsche," I said. "And I conducted a forensic audit of my parents." Monica stopped typing. She slowly swiveled her chair around to face me. A slow, shark-like smile spread across her face. She reached for the coffee. "Start from the beginning," she said, "and do not leave out the numbers." I told her everything. I told her about the birthday silence. I told her about the Facebook post of Logan. I told her about the bonus that hit my account, and the subsequent rage that felt less like heat and more like clarity. But mostly, we talked about the strategy. Technically, the conversation about the car had happened yesterday, during a frantic 5-minute phone call right after I saw my mother's post about Logan. That call was the catalyst. I remembered it vividly. I had been hiding in the office stairwell, hyperventilating, flashback to yesterday afternoon. "They forgot again. Monica," I had whispered into the phone, clutching the railing. 3 years in a row, and they are praising him for existing. "Stop," Monica had snapped, her voice cutting through the static. "Do not cry in the stairwell, Violet. It ruins the acoustics of your authority. Listen to me. You have a choice right now. You can go home, eat ice cream, and be the sad, reliable daughter, or you can change the leverage." "I want them to hurt," I had said. "No, that is not right. I want them to see me. I want them to stop looking through me to get to him." "Then you need to become opaque," Monica had said. "You are too transparent. Violet, you are too easy. They don't see you because you don't require maintenance. You need to become a problem, but not a messy problem, an expensive problem." "My dad hates flashy spending," I had told her. "He calls sports cars midlife crisis mobiles and idiot taxes. He thinks wealth should be whispered, not shouted." "Good," Monica had replied, and I could practically hear her brain calculating the angles. "Then buy the thing he fears most. Buy the thing that screams that you have resources he cannot control. If you buy a house, they will say it is sensible. If you buy stocks, they won't see it. Buy something that sits in their driveway and mocks their financial mediocrity. Buy the Porsche." "It is $95,000. I had hesitated. "Run the numbers," she had commanded. "Can you afford the down payment without touching your emergency fund?" "Yes." Can you handle the monthly cash flow without altering your retirement contributions?" "Yes." "Does it destroy your long-term liquidity?" "No. I got the bonus." "Then it is not a purchase," Monica had said. "It is a marketing campaign. Go buy the damn car." End of flashback. Back in the present. Monica took a sip of her coffee and looked at the spreadsheet I had printed out late last night, the fax dossier. She ran a manicured finger down the column of transfers to Logan. "This is impressive," she murmured. "And by impressive, I mean horrifying. This isn't parental support. Violet, this is a subscription service. They are subscribed to the Golden Boy package. Premium tier." "I calculated the burn rate," I said, pointing to the bottom line, "including the incidental transfers for his rent and the fake incubator fees. They are down over $90,000 in 2 years. That is nearly half their liquid savings, based on what I know of their retirement accounts." Monica shook her head. "It is classic sunk cost fallacy. They have invested so much in his potential success that they cannot afford to let him fail. If he fails, they are just idiots who wasted money. If he succeeds, they are visionaries who supported a genius. They are gambling their pension on a horse with 3 legs." "I am going to the meeting tonight," I said, my voice steady. "They think they are going to yell at me for buying the car. They think they are going to lecture me on responsibility. And you are going to walk in there and slap them with a balance sheet," Monica finished, She leaned back, tapping her pen against her chin. But you need more. The spreadsheet proves they are spending money. It doesn't prove the money is being wasted. They will just say, it is seed capital. They will say you don't understand the tech world. I know, I said. That is what I'm worried about. Logan talks a good game. He will use words like pivot and runway and make me look like the jealous sister who doesn't get the vision. Monica smiled again, but this time it was different. It was the smile she wore when she found a loophole in a contract that allowed us to hostile take over a competitor. That is why I did a little digging of my own this morning, she said. She opened a drawer and pulled out a thin file folder. She slid it across the desk to me. I have a friend in the Consumer Protection Bureau, Monica said casually. I asked him to run a query on the Nexus program and the parent company behind it. I also scraped some forums on Reddit and Blind where former founders discuss their experiences. I opened the folder. It wasn't just complaints. It was a litany of fraud. Hidden fees, Monica listed, ticking them off on her fingers. Non-existent mentors. The investors at demo days are actually paid actors or consultants selling services. But here is the kicker. Violet, look at the third page. I turned the page. It was a screenshot of a legal threat sent to a former participant who had tried to leave the program and stop paying the monthly fee. The email from the incubator threatened to sue the 22-year-old for breach of contract and defamation if he spoke publicly about the lack of resources. They are predators, I whispered. They aren't building startups. They are milking dreamers. Exactly, Monica said. And your brother isn't just a victim. If he is recruiting others, which is common in these pyramid scheme structures, to get a discount on his own fees, he is an accomplice. I felt a chill go down my spine. I remembered the referral bonus Logan had mentioned once, vaguely, as a partnership commission. I drafted something for you, Monica said, sliding a second document across the desk. It was a formal complaint to the Federal Trade Commission and the State Attorney General's office. It was filled out with the details of the Nexus program, citing deceptive business practices and predatory lending. It was not signed. You don't have to file it, Monica said, her voice dropping to a serious, strategic register. But you need to have it in your bag. This is your nuclear deterrent. If Logan tries to spin this, if he tries to say you are sabotaging his career, you put this on the table. You tell him that you aren't just looking at his finances, you are looking at his legal exposure. I looked at the document. It was heavy in my hands. It felt like a weapon. Do you really think it will come to this? I asked. They are my family. They ceased acting like family when they decided you were the bank and he was the charity, Monica said sharply. Violet, look at me. You asked me yesterday if you should buy the car. I told you to buy it because you needed a loudspeaker. You needed something loud enough to break their trance. She pointed at the Porsche key fob lying on the desk between us. The car is the noise, she said. It gets their attention. It makes them panic. It gets you into the room. Then she pointed at the folder labeled facts and the complaint she had just given me. But this is the signal. The car is why they called the meeting. The dossier is how you survive it. I took a deep breath. I put the papers into my leather portfolio. I placed the car key in my pocket. 7 o'clock, I said. Family meeting. Do not apologize, Monica instructed. Turning back to her screens. Do not explain the car. Do not justify your bonus. You are the senior risk strategist. They are the distressed asset. Treat it like a board meeting where you are the majority shareholder. Because I am, I realized. I am the only one with actual capital. Now you are getting it, Monica said. Go get back to work. You have a portfolio to manage. And Violet? I paused at the door. Happy birthday, she said, without looking up. I walked out of her office. The hallway was quiet. The hum of the trading floor was just beginning to rise. I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. For years, I had walked into my parents' house feeling like a child seeking permission. Tonight, I would walk in as a creditor seeking answers. I patted the folder under my arm. The numbers were black and white. The logic was sound. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't bringing a casserole to the family gathering. I was bringing the truth. The glass doors of the dealership slid open with a soft, pneumatic hiss. I stepped onto the polished white tile floor, the air conditioning hitting my face like a cold compress. The showroom was a cathedral of consumerism, smelling of tire rubber, espresso, and expensive cologne. A salesman detached himself from a cluster of men near the reception desk. He was tall, with hair gelled into a helmet and a suit that was just a shade too blue. He scanned me as he walked over. He saw my sensible flats, my work tote, and my lack of visible jewelry. His smile didn't reach his eyes. It was the smile one gives to someone who is lost. "Good afternoon," he said, his voice pitched to a practiced, soothing baritone. "Are we looking for the service department, or perhaps picking up a part for a spouse?" I stopped walking. I let the silence hang for 3 seconds, a negotiation tactic I used in boardrooms to make junior analysts sweat. "I am not a courier," I said. "I am a customer. I am here for the Carrera S, the gentian blue one you have listed in inventory as Unit 409. The salesman blinked. The script in his head had just jammed. "Ah, the Carrera, a beautiful machine. It is a lot of car. Are you as your husband joining us? Usually, for a purchase of this magnitude, we like to have all decision-makers present." "I am the decision-maker," I said, stepping around him to walk toward the car. "And my husband is non-existent. I assume your commission structure doesn't discriminate based on marital status, does it?" He scrambled to catch up, his shoes clicking on the tile. "No, of course not. I just meant it is a high-performance vehicle. It can be intimidating." I reached the car. It sat under the halogen lights, low and predatory. The blue paint looked like deep water. I ran a hand along the roofline. It was cool to the touch. "Open it," I said. He fumbled for the fob in his pocket. The lights flashed, and the locks clicked. I slid into the driver's seat. It fit me like a glove. The smell of new leather enveloped me, a scent that smelled like success and selfishness. The salesman leaned into the open window. "It has the Sport Chrono package," he said, trying to regain control of the interaction. 0 to 60 in 3.3 seconds. "And the sound system is—" "I don't care about the speakers," I interrupted, gripping the steering wheel. "Let's talk about the numbers. What is the residual value percentage after 36 months on this model year? Is it holding at 58% like the previous generation? Or has the market saturation dipped it to 55? He stared at me. "I would have to check with the finance manager." "Do that," I said. "And while you are there, I want the exact figures on the prepaid maintenance schedule for the first 4 years. I also want to see the fine print on the warranty regarding track use. Not that I plan to track it, but I want to know the exclusion clauses, and tell me the exact destination fee. I know the invoice price is significantly lower than what is on the sticker. So let's skip the dance, where you pretend you are doing me a favor." He looked at me with a new expression. It wasn't respect, exactly. It was fear. He realized I wasn't buying a toy. I was acquiring an asset. "I will get the paperwork," he said, and practically ran toward the glass offices in the back. 30 minutes later, I sat across from the finance manager. He was a heavier man who tried to intimidate me with a lot of paper shuffling. He pushed a contract across the desk. "Standard terms," he said. "Sign here, here, and here." I took a pen from my purse. I didn't sign. I read every line. I read the arbitration clause. I read the early termination penalties. I read the gap insurance provision. "Remove the paint protection package," I said, pointing to line 12. "I can get it done detailing for a third of this price, and the document fee is capped by state law at $300. You have it listed at $500. Fix it." The manager looked at the salesman. The salesman looked at the floor. "She knows her stuff," the manager muttered, typing on his keyboard to reprint the contract. When the final number was presented, $95,412. I pulled out my checkbook. I didn't tremble. My heart rate didn't spike. I felt a profound, icy calm. This wasn't an impulse buy. This wasn't a midlife crisis. This was a reallocation of funds. For years, My surplus income had sat in low-yield savings accounts, waiting for a rainy day, or worse, waiting for my parents to guilt me into helping with a family emergency. Today, I was turning that liquid capital into steel. I was locking it away in a form they couldn't borrow, couldn't transfer, and couldn't give to Logan. I signed my name, Violet Jenkins. The signature looked sharp, aggressive. "Congratulations," the salesman said, handing me the keys. He looked exhausted. "You are very thorough." "I work in risk management," I said. "I don't like surprises." I drove out of the lot. The engine roared behind me, a deep, guttural growl that vibrated in my chest. I merged onto the highway, heading back toward the city. The sun was beginning to set, casting long, golden shadows across the asphalt. I didn't go home immediately. I drove to the museum campus, specifically the stretch of road that curves out into the lake, offering the perfect panoramic view of the Chicago skyline. I parked the car so the Sears Tower, I would never call it Willis, loomed in the background. The sky was turning a bruised purple. The city lights were just flickering on, reflecting off the dark water of Lake Michigan. I got out. The wind was whipping off the lake, cold and biting, but I didn't feel it. I looked at the car. The street lamps caught the curves of the fender, making the gentian blue paint look like liquid metal. It looked dangerous. It looked like a weapon. I took my phone out. I spent 5 minutes framing the shot. I wanted the angle to be low. Looking up at the car and the city, I wanted it to look undeniable. I snapped the photo. It was perfect. The car gleamed, the city sparkled, and there was no filter needed to hide imperfections, because there were none. I opened social media. My thumb hovered over the caption box. I could have written something emotional. "Finally did something for myself," or "best birthday ever," but those sounded like I was asking for validation. I didn't want validation. I wanted to make a statement of fact. I typed "happy birthday" to me. No favors. Just work. I posted it. Then I sat on the hood of my $95,000 car and watched the screen. The reaction was immediate. My college friends, my colleagues at Stonebridge, the people who actually knew me, they flooded the comments. "Queen, you deserve this so much. Hard work pays off. Stunning. Can I get a ride?" It was a dopamine loop of positivity, but I wasn't looking for their names. I was watching the seen by list on my story. 10 minutes passed. 20. Then, the name appeared. Marianne Jenkins. And 2 minutes later, Gary Jenkins. And 5 minutes later, Logan Jenkins. I waited for the like. I waited for the comment. "Wow," or "happy birthday," or even "that is a lot of car." Nothing. The scene icon just sat there, staring back at me. A silent, digital acknowledgement. They had seen it. They had seen the wealth I had been hiding. They had seen the money that wasn't going into Logan's incubator. They didn't like the photo. They didn't comment. They simply observed it, like a thread on the horizon. I drove home. I parked in my building's garage, the Porsche looking out of place among the sedans and compact SUVs. I went upstairs, poured a glass of wine, and sat in the dark. It was 9:30 at night when my phone finally rang. The caller ID said Dad. I picked it up on the second ring. "Hello?" There was no greeting, no "happy birthday, sweetheart," no "how are you?" "What is that on your Facebook?" my father asked. His voice wasn't just angry, it was tight. It sounded like he was strangling the receiver. "It is a car, Dad," I said, taking a sip of wine. "I bought it this afternoon." "I know it is a car," he snapped. "I have eyes. I am asking why it is on your Facebook. And where did you get it? A Porsche." "Violet? Seriously. Do you know what people are going to think?" "They are going to think I have a good job," I said. "They are going to think you are drug dealing," he shouted. "Or that you are drowning in debt. It is vulgar. It is flashy. We don't do flashy. Violet, we are humble people." "You posted a photo of Logan standing in front of a private jet he didn't own last month," I countered calmly. "Was that humble?" "That was branding," he yelled. "That was for his image. He is a CEO. He needs to project success to attract investors. You..." You are a risk strategist. You sit in a cubicle. You don't need a Porsche to do spreadsheets. You are just showing off. You are vunging money in people's faces. It is my money, I said. I earned it. I didn't ask you for a dime. That is exactly the point. The volume of his voice dropped, shifting from rage to something darker interrogation. Where did you get that kind of cash? Violet? Did you take out a loan? Tell me the truth. Did you sign something stupid? No loan, I said. Paid in full. I heard a sharp intake of breath on the other end. Then I heard him muffle the phone, whispering something frantically to my mother. I caught snippets. Paid in full, she has that much. Why didn't she say? He came back on the line. His tone had changed. It was now the voice of a manager trying to control a rogue employee. We need to meet, he said. This is getting out of hand. You are making decisions that affect the family image, and you are clearly hiding things from us. Hiding things? I laughed. I just posted it on the internet for the world to see. Don't get smart with me, he growled. Tomorrow, 7 p.m., the house, family meeting, and I want you to bring the paperwork for that car. I want to see exactly what you did. It was a command. He was used to me folding. He was used to good girl Violet, who would apologize for being too loud, for taking up too much space, but good girl Violet had been left on the showroom floor. Fine, I said. I will be there at 7. Good, he said. We are going to get to the bottom of this. Dad, I asked, just before he could hang up. What? If we are having a meeting about money, I said, my voice dropping to a low, steel register, then we are going to talk about all the money, not just mine. There was a pause, a heavy, loaded silence. Just be there, he said, and the line went dead. I lowered the phone. My hand was shaking slightly, not from fear, but from adrenaline. I looked at the dark screen. He wanted a family meeting to scold me for spending my own money. He wanted to shame me back into my box, back into the role of the quiet, frugal safety net. He wanted to know how much I had so he could calculate how much he could guilt me into giving Logan later. I walked over to my laptop and tapped the space bar. The screen lit up, revealing the folder on the desktop. Fax. I will be there, I whispered to the empty room. And I am bringing the receipts. I arrived at my parents' house at 6:45 in the evening, 15 minutes early. This was a calculated move. In any negotiation, the person who sets the physical parameters of the room controls the temperature of the conversation. I did not park in the street. I pulled my $95,000 Porsche 911 Carrera S right into the driveway, positioning it directly behind my father's least special sedan and my mother's 10-year-old SUV. The gentian blue paint screamed against the beige vinyl siding of their suburban home. It looked like a spaceship had landed in a Norman Rockwell painting. It was a beautiful, shiny, aggressive exclamation point. I stepped out of the car. I adjusted my blazer. I grabbed the black leather portfolio containing the folder labeled fax and the unsigned FTC complaint Monica had drafted. The front door opened before I even reached the porch steps. My mother stood there. She was wearing a floral blouse and stiff trousers, the kind of outfit she wore to church or to meet with a loan officer. She was smiling, but it was a brittle, frantic expression that showed too many teeth. Violet, she said, her voice high and tight. You are early. I have a schedule to keep, I said, stepping past her into the foyer. The house smelled the same as it always did, lemon pledge and stagnation, but the atmosphere was different. Usually, the air here felt heavy with their adoration for Logan. Tonight, it felt pressurized, like the cabin of a plane right before the oxygen masks drop. I walked into the living room. My father was standing by the fireplace, his arms crossed over his chest. His face flushed a deep, mottled red. He looked like a judge who had already written the sentence before the trial began. Logan was sitting on the edge of the sofa, bouncing his knee up and down. He was wearing a hoodie that said "Disrupt" across the chest. He looked at me, then looked away, tapping furiously on his phone. He looked like a man waiting for a text message that was going to save his life. Sit down, my father commanded. He pointed to the armchair in the corner, the one that was lower than the sofa, the one that forced you to look up at everyone else. I ignored him. I walked to the dining room table, pulled out a straight-backed wooden chair, and sat down. I placed my leather portfolio on the table with a heavy, deliberate thud. We can sit here, I said. Since this is a meeting. My father's jaw tightened. He walked over and sat at the head of the table. My mother fluttered in and took the seat next to Logan, placing a protective hand on his knee. We are very disappointed in you, Violet, my father began. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. We saw that picture. We saw the car in the driveway. I don't know what has gotten into you. A desire for quality engineering, I suggested, keeping my face blank. Don't play games, he snapped. This is reckless. It is wasteful. That car is a liability. You are 29 years old, and you are behaving like a lottery winner who is going to be bankrupt in 6 months. We raised you to be responsible. We raised you to value security. Security? I repeated the word. Is that what we are talking about? My financial security. We are talking about the family's reputation, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. Do you know what people will think? They will think you are shallow. They will think you are wasting resources. You have a good job. Yes, but jobs can be lost. Markets crash, and here you are, driving a car that costs more than some people earn in 2 years, Logan chimed in, his voice whiny and petulant. It is just a cry for attention. Dad, she sees me building something real, and she has to go buy a toy to feel special. It is classic middle child syndrome, even though she is the oldest. I looked at Logan. He was 26 years old, but in that moment, he looked 12. You think I bought this car on impulse, I said calmly. You think I woke up, saw a shiny object, and threw money at it. That is your narrative, right? That Violet has lost her mind. Well, haven't you? My mother asked, her voice trembling. Violet, honey, that is so much money. If you had that kind of money, you should have saved it. You should have put it away for a rainy day. I did save it, I said. And then I realized that in this family, rainy days only seem to happen to Logan, so I decided to buy an umbrella. I reached for the portfolio. I unzipped it. The sound of the zipper was loud in the silent room. You called this meeting to discuss my finances, I said. So let's discuss them. But we cannot discuss my spending in a vacuum. We have to look at the whole portfolio. I pulled out the first document. It was a color-coded spreadsheet, printed on high-quality paper. I slid it across the table toward my father. What is this? He asked, looking down at it with disdain. That, I said, is a summary of outgoing transfers from your joint checking account and the emergency savings fund for the last 26 months. My mother went pale. Her hand flew to her mouth. You have been spying on us. Spying. I shook my head. No, Mom, 3 years ago, you asked me to set up your online banking because you couldn't figure out how to reset your password. You asked me to monitor for fraud. You never revoked the access. I didn't break in. I just read the statements you get emailed to me every 30 days. I pointed to the column in red. $1,950, I said clearly. Every single month. On the first, it goes to a landlord in River North. That is Logan's rent. You told me he was living off his seed capital. Logan stopped bouncing his leg. He stared at the table. It is a bridge loan, Logan shouted, his face turning red. It is temporary. Once the Series A closes, I am paying them back with interest. Series A, I said, my voice dripping with ice. Let's talk about that. I flipped to the second page of the dossier. July 14th, I read, $4,500 to the Nexus Group. August 15th, $4,500 to the Nexus Group. September, October, November. I looked at my father. You told me you were helping him a little bit. You have paid nearly $50,000 in fees to a company that has no accreditation, no successful exits, and a Better Business Bureau rating of F. It is an incubator, my father argued, though his voice lacked its earlier conviction. They provide mentorship. They provide connections. They provide a co-working desk and a coffee machine, I corrected. I did the research. Dad, the mentors are paid consultants. The investors at the pitch nights are actors. You aren't investing in a startup. You are paying tuition for an adult daycare. That is a lie. Logan stood up, his chair scraping violently against the floor. You are just jealous. You are a corporate drone, Violet. You push paper for a living. You don't understand the vision. You are trying to sabotage me because you can't stand that I'm going to be bigger than you. Sit down, Logan, I said. I didn't yell. I didn't have to. My voice was quiet, deadly, and authoritative. It was the voice I used to tell a CEO his company was insolvent. To my surprise, and his, he sat down. I slid the next piece of paper across the table. It was a printout of Logan's Instagram profile side by side with the bank statement. November 3rd, I pointed out. Logan posts a picture of a bottle of Dom Perignon with the caption, "Closing deals." That same night, at 11:42 p.m., Mom transferred $600 to his account with the memo, "Urgent." I looked at my mother. She was crying now, silent tears streaming down her face. She didn't look at me. She looked at Logan. He told us he needed it for legal fees, she whispered. He bought bottle service, I said brutally. There were no legal fees. There is no company. Mom, there is no product. There is no revenue. I checked the state business registry. Logan Tech isn't even incorporated. He is just a guy with a website and your credit card. The silence that followed was deafening. The grandfather clock in the hallway ticked loudly. My father looked at the spreadsheet, then at Logan, then at me. His face was a mask of conflict. He knew I was right. The numbers were right there in black and white, but admitting I was right meant admitting he had been a fool. It meant admitting his golden boy was a fraud. So he did what he always did. He attacked the messenger. "This is irrelevant," he grunted, pushing the papers away. "We are talking about your car. We are talking about your spending. What we do with our money is our business. If we choose to support your brother, that is our prerogative as parents. You don't get to audit us." "Violet?" "I do," I said. "When you call me here to lecture me about responsibility—" "Stop deflecting," he shouted, standing up to loom over me. "This isn't about Logan. This is about you. You bought a $95,000 car to spite us. You did it to be flashy. You did it to rub it in our faces." "I bought it because I earned it," I said, standing up as well. I was shorter than him, but in that moment, I felt 10 feet tall. "And because I realized something very important yesterday." "What?" he sneered. "That you are selfish." "No," I said. "I realized why you are so angry. You aren't mad that I spent money. You are mad that I spent money you thought was available for you." "How dare you?" my mother gasped. "It is true," I continued, relentless. "You looked at my bonus. You looked at my savings, and you saw a safety net. You saw a backup plan for when Logan crashes and burns. You saw me as the insurance policy, and when I bought that Porsche, I burned the policy. I used the resources you thought you were entitled to." "We are family," my father roared. "We help each other. If your brother needs help, we help him. That is what families do." "No," I said. "That is what you do. You cannibalize the responsible child to feed the delusional one." I reached into the portfolio and pulled out the last document, the unsigned FTC complaint. I held it up. "What is that?" Logan asked, his eyes widening. "This is a draft of a formal complaint to the Federal Trade Commission regarding the Nexus Group," I said, "and it mentions you. Logan, it mentions the referral bonuses you took. It mentions the false promises you made to other founders to get them to sign up so you could get a discount on your fees." Logan went white. He looked like he was going to be sick. "You wouldn't," he whispered. "I haven't filed it yet," I said, "but I did the research. That is what I do. I assess risk. And right now, Logan, you are a toxic asset." My father looked at the complaint in my hand. He looked at the Porsche in the driveway. He looked at the spreadsheet on the table. The anger was draining out of him, replaced by fear. "Violet," he said, his voice softer, almost pleading. "Put that away. We don't need to involve the authorities. We can handle this internally." "Can we?" I asked. "Because 5 minutes ago, you were screaming at me for buying a car with my own money." "We were just shocked," he backpedaled. "It is a lot of money. We just worry about you." "Don't lie to me," I said. "Not anymore." I slowly zipped up the portfolio. I didn't put the spreadsheet back in. I left it on the table, a paper stain on their denial. "I am leaving," I said. "I have a dinner reservation in the city. I am celebrating my birthday, since you missed it." "Violet, wait," my mother said, standing up. "Please, let's just talk. We can fix this." I turned to her. I looked at the woman who had forgotten my birthday 3 years in a row, but sent urgent transfers to Logan for legal fees that were actually champagne. "There is nothing to fix, Mom," I said. "The books are balanced. I spent my money on me. You spent your money on him. Everyone got what they wanted." I walked to the door. My hand was on the knob when I turned back for the final blow. "You called me here because you said I was embarrassing the family," I said, my voice echoing in the hallway. "But let's be honest. I am only embarrassing to you when I am no longer useful to cover the consequences of your bad decisions." I opened the door. The night air was cool. "Enjoy the meeting," I said. "I think you have a lot of math to do." I walked out, leaving the door slightly ajar so they could watch me get into my $95,000 car. I started the engine. The headlights cut through the darkness, illuminating the terrified faces of my parents standing in the window. I didn't look back as I backed out of the driveway, but I knew one thing for certain: the silence was over. The adrenaline from the family meeting acted like a drug. For the first time in my life, I slept deeply, wrapped in the sheets of my West Loop apartment, feeling a sense of grim satisfaction. I had dropped the bomb. I had walked away. I had won. Or so I thought. I woke up at 6:30 in the morning to get ready for work. I felt lighter, as if a heavy coat had been taken off my shoulders. I made coffee. I opened my laptop to check the early market trends for the day. Then, my phone buzzed against the marble countertop. It was not a text. It was a notification from my credit monitoring app. A red banner stretched across the lock screen. "Alert delinquent payment reported on account ending in 4922. I frowned. I did not have an account ending in 4922. My primary credit card ended in 8011. My car loan, the one I had just paid off, was closed. I was meticulous with my finances. I had a credit score of 820. I did not miss payments. I unlocked the phone and tapped the notification. The app loaded slowly, the spinning wheel mocking my rising pulse. When the dashboard finally populated, my breath hitched in my throat. There, listed under open lines of credit, was a trade line I had never seen before. Creditor Amex Business Blueprint. Balance, $22,450. Status: 30 days past due. My coffee cup hovered halfway to my mouth. I stared at the screen, a business line of credit. Under my name, Violet Jenkins. I clicked on the Details tab. My eyes scanned the data points, my brain shifting instantly from daughter to risk strategist. Date opened. 6 months ago. Credit limit, $30,000. And then, the address. It was not my apartment in the city. It was not my office at Stonebridge Meridian. The billing address listed was 42 Oak Creek Drive, my parents' house. The ceramic mug slipped from my fingers. It hit the counter with a loud clatter, spilling hot coffee over my hand and onto the floor. But I did not feel the burn. I only felt a cold, paralyzing shockwave ripple through my body. I did not open this account. I did not sign for this. I scrambled to pick up the phone, my sticky fingers swiping to the dialer. I called the number on the back of my own Amex card, bypassing the automated menu by hitting 0 repeatedly until a human voice answered. "Security Department," I said, my voice trembling with a rage I had never known before. "I need to verify a trade line on my report." The agent asked me verification questions: mother's maiden name, social security number. Then she asked me to verify the business name associated with the account. I don't have a business, I said. That is why I am calling. The account is listed under VJ Consulting, the agent said, opened by a Violet Jenkins and a guarantor. Logan Jenkins. The room spun. Logan, I closed my eyes, and suddenly, the entire timeline of the last 24 hours snapped into a terrifying focus. I thought about my father's face when he saw the Porsche. I thought about the panic in his eyes. I thought about his frantic question, "Where did you get that kind of cash? Did you take out a loan?" He had not been worried about my financial health. He had not been worried about the family reputation. He had been terrified because he knew this debt existed. He knew there was a $22,000 hole dug in my name. And when he saw the Porsche, he assumed I had used my liquidity, the liquidity he was counting on, to fill that hole before I noticed it to buy a car. They weren't angry that I was spending my money. They were angry that I was spending the money they had already mentally earmarked to bail out their crime. I hung up the phone. I did not scream. I did not throw things. I went into a state of absolute, cryogenic freeze. I looked at the calendar on my wall. 6 months ago. What happened 6 months ago? I scrolled back through my text messages with Logan. I found it. A message from him dated exactly 6 months prior. Logan, hey Vi. Big news. Just closed the first round of pre-seed funding for the venture. Investors are finally biting. Going to be huge. I had replied, "Congrats. Proud of you." He hadn't found investors. He had opened a line of credit in my name, using my perfect credit score to underwrite his delusions, and likely forged my signature to do it. I needed a confession, and I needed it now. I did not call my parents. They would lie. They would gaslight. They would talk about family unity. I needed the weak link. I needed the one who was arrogant enough to think he had done nothing wrong. I sent a text to Logan. Violet, I have the check for the incubator legal fees you mentioned last night. I want to help. Meet me at the coffee shop on State Street in 30 minutes. Don't tell Mom and Dad. I want this to be between us. It was the bait he couldn't resist. Money. 35 minutes later, I walked into the coffee shop. I was wearing my sunglasses. Even though it was overcast, I sat in the back corner. Logan walked in 5 minutes later. He looked tired, but there was a spring in his step that hadn't been there the night before. The promise of cash always perked him up. He sat down opposite me, looking wary but hopeful. I knew you would come around, he said, leaning in. Look, last night was intense, but I know you get it. You are a business person. You know you have to spend money to make money. I do, I said softly. I get it, Logan. I placed my phone on the table, face down. The voice recorder was running. So, I said, keeping my voice casual, I was looking at the structure of your funding. For the legal fees, I want to write the check, but I need to know where the other capital is coming from, just for my own due diligence. Oh, you know. He waved a hand dismissively. Angels, friends and family round. We have a few lines of credit open for operational costs. Lines of credit, I repeated. Those are hard to get for a new business without revenue. Did you have to personally guarantee them? Yeah, sure, he said, taking a sip of his latte. Standard stuff. It must be nice, I said, to have the credit score for that. I mean, my score is good, but business loans are tricky. Did you have to use a cosigner? He hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. His eyes flicked to the left. Well, you know, he mumbled. Mom and Dad helped set up the initial framework. It was all part of the incorporation package. I leaned forward. I took off my sunglasses. I looked him dead in the eye. Logan, I said, did you sign my name? He froze. The cup stopped halfway to the saucer. What? He laughed nervously. What are you talking about? The Amex Business Blueprint line, I said. Ending in 4922. The one that is $22,000 past due. The one with the billing address at Mom and Dad's house. His face went from flush to gray in 2 seconds flat. He looked like a child caught stealing from the collection plate. Violet, listen, he stammered. It is not what it looks like. Did you sign my name? It was just a digital signature, he blurted out. It was part of the online application. Mom said it was okay. She said we were just using your profile to get the preferred rate, and we would pay it off before the statement even hit. It was a bridge. Vi. Just a temporary bridge. Mom said it was okay, I repeated. The betrayal felt like a physical blow to the stomach. It wasn't just Logan being a thief. It was a conspiracy. So they knew you were committing identity theft against their own daughter. It is not theft, Logan hissed, looking around to see if anyone was listening. We are family. What is yours is ours. You have that high-paying job. You have the credit capacity. I needed the runway. We were going to pay it back next month when the real funding came in. There is no real funding, Logan. I slammed my hand on the table, making the cutlery jump. There never was. You are funding your life with my credit score. You are overreacting, he pleaded. Just pay the minimum balance for me this month, and I swear, once the app launches. I stood up. I felt sick. I looked at this man, my brother, and saw a stranger, a parasite. My phone rang. It was my father. Logan must have texted him under the table. I answered it on speakerphone, holding it out so Logan could hear. Violet, my father's voice was breathless. Logan just texted me. Now, calm down. Don't make a scene. You authorized this, I said into the phone. You let him open a credit line in my name. It was a strategic decision, my father said, using his head of household voice. We were up against a wall with his burn rate. Your credit was sitting there, unused. It seemed foolish to go to a predatory lender when we could just leverage the family assets. It was just paperwork, Violet. We didn't want to bother you with the admin. Bother me. I laughed, a sharp, hysterical sound. You committed a felony, Dad. That is fraud. That is identity theft. Don't use those words, he snapped. We are your parents. We made a decision for the good of the family unit. And frankly, if you hadn't gone out and bought that ridiculous car, you would have had plenty of liquidity to help us clear this balance before it became an issue. You forced our hand. Violet, the gaslighting was breathtaking. In his mind, my purchase of the Porsche was the crime because it removed the funds he intended to steal from me. I see, I said. So I am the villain because I spent my own money before you could steal it. We were protecting you. My mother's voice chimed in from the background. We didn't want you to worry about Logan's struggles. I looked at Logan. He was watching the phone with a look of pathetic hope, thinking his parents were talking him out of trouble. I am hanging up now, I said. Violet, wait, my father ordered. You are going to write a check to clear that delinquency. We cannot have a default on the record. It will ruin the business credit. There is no business, I said, and there is no we. I hung up. I looked at Logan. I am going to make a call, I said. To who? He asked, his voice trembling. To pay it. No, I said. I am calling the credit bureaus. I opened the Experian app on my phone. I navigated to the security settings. Violet, don't, Logan whispered. If you freeze it, if you dispute it, they will investigate. They will see the IP address. They will see the money went to my account. I know, I said. They could charge me, he said, tears welling up in his eyes. With fraud, I could go to jail. Violet, do you want your brother in jail? I looked at the notifications on my screen. Freeze credit report. Fraud alert. I thought about the last 3 years. The missed birthdays. The lies. The Thanksgiving dinner where I was ignored. The family meeting where I was treated like a bank. But this was different. This wasn't just favoritism. This was consumption. They had eaten my identity to feed his ego. I don't want you in jail, Logan, I said quietly, but I refuse to be in debt for a life I didn't live. I pressed the button. Credit frozen. I switched to TransUnion. Credit frozen. I switched to Equifax. Credit frozen. Then I opened the Amex app and clicked Dispute Charge. What did you do? Logan asked, his face white. I just stopped the bleeding, I said. I am reporting the account as fraudulent. I am signing an affidavit stating I did not open it. I am not paying a single cent of that $22,000. Logan, the bank will come looking for the person who actually spent the money, and since you transferred it to your personal checking account, they won't have to look very far. Logan put his head in his hands. I am leaving, I said. Do not contact me. Do not come to my apartment. If you or Mom or Dad try to open another account in my name, I won't just file a dispute. I will file a police report. I walked out of the coffee shop. The morning air was cold, but my skin felt hot. I walked to my car, my beautiful, paid-off Porsche. I sat in the driver's seat and locked the doors. I had thought the secret was that they were giving him their money, but the twist was so much darker. They weren't just giving him their money. They had run out of their own money long ago. For the last 6 months, Logan hadn't been living off my parents' generosity. He had been living off my name. He had been wearing my credit score like a costume, racking up debts that he planned to let me inherit. My parents knew. They had watched him do it. They had probably provided the Social Security number from their old tax returns. They had sacrificed me on the altar of his potential without blinking an eye. I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. The sadness was gone. The shock was gone. All that was left was a clarity so sharp it cut. I started the engine. I had one more stop to make, not to the bank, not to the police. I needed a lawyer, a ruthless one. Because this wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was a war. The submission of the complaint was not dramatic. There was no thunderclap, no ominous music. I simply sat at my desk at Stonebridge Meridian, attached the file labeled Nexus Group Evidence, and clicked the blue Submit button on the Federal Trade Commission's Consumer Protection Portal. I did the same for the Illinois Attorney General's office. It took 3 seconds. I had spent the last week in a state of hyper-focused calm. After freezing my credit and disputing the fraudulent business line, I had expected an immediate explosion, but there had been silence. It was the receding water before a tsunami. My parents were likely scrambling, trying to figure out how to bypass the credit freeze, trying to shuffle funds to cover the minimum payment on the Amex account before the delinquency turned into a default judgment. They did not know I had nuked the source of the rot. 7 days after I filed the complaint, the dominoes began to fall. It started with a text from Logan at 10 in the morning. Pick up the phone, now, something is happening. I ignored it. I was in a risk assessment meeting. Then, 5 minutes later, they emailed me. They are asking for records. Violet, what did you do? By noon, my father called. I let it go to voicemail. He left a message that was just heavy breathing and the sound of my mother crying in the background, followed by a curt, "Call us. Immediately. This is an emergency." I waited until 5:30 in the evening. I sat in my car, my paid-off, beautiful, fortress of a car, and dialed Logan's number. He answered on the first ring. He sounded breathless, as if he had been running. "You reported them," he accused, his voice cracking. "You actually reported the incubator." "I reported a fraudulent business practice," I said calmly. "Why is there a problem?" "A problem." He let out a hysterical laugh. "I got an email from an investigator at the Attorney General's office. They are opening an inquiry into the Nexus Group. They wanted to verify my enrollment. They wanted to verify my payments. And then they asked about my role in recruitment. And they called my cell phone." "Violet?" "They asked if I was aware of the fee structure discrepancies. They asked if I had been compensated for bringing other members in." I felt a cold satisfaction settle in my gut. "Well, were you—" "That is not the point," he screamed. "The point is that you blew everything up. The Nexus admins sent out a blast email saying operations are paused pending a legal review. The co-working space is locked. The website is down. Everything is frozen." "Good," I said. "Then they can't steal money from anyone else." "You don't understand." My father's voice suddenly boomed on the line. He must have been listening on speaker. "You have destroyed his network, Violet. You have destroyed his reputation if this goes public. If his name is attached to a fraud investigation, His career is over before it even started. His career was a fiction, Dad, I said. I just turned on the lights. We need to fix this, my father said, his voice shifting from anger to a frantic, manic planning mode. We need a lawyer, not just for the business, but for Logan. If they try to pin this on him, if they try to say he was an accomplice. Is he? I asked. Did he take money, Dad? There was silence. We need money, my mother sobbed, her voice breaking through the static. We need a retainer for a criminal defense attorney. The one Gary called said it would be $10,000 just to start. I am sure you have savings, I said, though I knew the answer. We don't, my father snapped. You know we don't. We put everything into the pre-seed round. We drained the liquid cash. Then use the retirement fund, I suggested, testing the depth of the water. We already did. The confession hung in the air, stark and horrifying. What? I whispered. We took a hardship withdrawal, my father admitted, his voice sounding old and defeated. 6 months ago, we took out $40,000. The tax penalty was huge, but we needed to give Logan a runway. We thought the Series A was coming next month. We thought we would pay it back. I closed my eyes. They had raided their 401k. They had set fire to their future to keep Logan warm for another 6 months. And now, he continued, his voice trembling, we were in the middle of processing a HELOC, a home equity line of credit. We were going to pull $50,000 out of the house equity to clear that Amex debt you found, just to make it go away so you wouldn't find out. But now that you froze your credit and reported the card, the bank paused the application. They saw the fraud alert. I felt like I was going to be sick. A HELOC. They were going to leverage the house. They were going to put a lien on the roof over their heads to pay off a credit card debt that Logan had fraudulently opened in my name. Why, I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Why didn't you just tell me? Why didn't you ask for help instead of stealing my identity and mortgaging the house? Because you would have lectured us, my father shouted, the shame curdling into aggression. You would have sat there with your spreadsheets and your judgments and told us we were stupid. You would have looked at us like we were children. We didn't want your advice, Violet. We just wanted to fix it. There it was, the raw, ugly truth. They would rather face financial ruin. They would rather commit fraud. They would rather risk homelessness than endure the humiliation of their daughter being right. My competence was not an asset to them. It was an insult. So you decided to make me a victim instead, I said. We were going to pay it back, Logan interjected. I swear. With what, Logan? I asked. With the referral bonuses. I only got a few, he stammered. $500 a head. I just brought in a couple of guys from college. I didn't know it was a scam, I just thought it was an affiliate program. Ignorance is not a defense when you are cashing the checks, I said. Just then, my other line beeped. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I have another call, I said. Don't you hang up, my father warned. We are in a crisis. I will call you back, I said, and clicked over. This is Violet, I said. Violet, this is Mark. I don't know if you remember me. I'm a friend of Logan's. We met at the barbecue last summer. I remembered him. A nice kid. He had just graduated with a degree in design. Hi, Mark, I said. What can I do for you? I didn't know who else to call. He sounded terrified. Logan isn't answering his texts. I heard you work in finance. Something is wrong with the Nexus Group. I went to the office today and the doors are chained shut, and the website is gone. I know, I said. Violet, Mark's voice broke. I gave them $12,000. It was my inheritance from my grandmother. Logan told me it was a sure thing. He said if I signed up under him, I'd get fast-tracked for funding. I signed the papers because I trusted him. Is the money gone? My grip on the steering wheel tightened until my fingernails dug into the leather. Collateral damage. It wasn't just my family. Logan had dragged his friends into the pit. I think the money is gone. Mark, I said gently, you need to file a police report. Immediately. And you need to mention that you were recruited. But that means reporting Logan, Mark whispered. If Logan took a commission on your money, I said. Then Logan is part of the problem. File the report. Mark. I hung up. I sat in the silence for a long minute. The scope of the disaster was expanding. It was no longer a private family drama. It was a legal blast zone. The retirement fund was gutted. The house equity was frozen. Logan was facing potential criminal liability for pyramid scheme recruitment, and my credit was a crime scene. My phone rang again. It was my mother this time. I picked up. "Violet," she said. She wasn't crying anymore. Her voice was eerily calm, the kind of calm that comes after a total breakdown. "We need to talk, not about the past, about the future." "There is no future where I pay for this," I said. "Please," she said, and then she said the words that changed everything. The words that severed the last thread of hope I had, that they saw me as a person. "You are the only one who can help us," she said. "You are the only one with clean credit. You are the only one with liquidity. We need you to take out a loan, a personal loan, just $50,000, to pay for the lawyer and cover the Amex debt before they sue us. We will sign over the house to you. We will do whatever you want, but you have to save the family. You are the only one who can help us." She didn't say, "We love you." She didn't say, "We are sorry." She identified me as a resource. I was the fire extinguisher. I was the paramedic. I was the checkbook. They had spent 30 years ignoring me, minimizing me, and prioritizing Logan. But now that the house was burning down, they suddenly remembered I existed. Not because they wanted me, but because they needed my water. I felt a coldness wash over me that was absolute. It was the death of expectation. "You want me to take on debt," I said slowly, "to pay for the lawyer who will defend Logan for stealing my identity." "We are a family," she repeated, like a broken record. "If Logan goes down, we all go down. The shame, Violet, think of the shame." "The shame is yours," I said, "not mine." "Violet, please," she begged, her voice rising to a shriek. "Don't turn your back on us. Look at everything we gave you." "You gave me nothing," I said. "And that is exactly why I have everything I have." I took a deep breath. "I am not giving you $50,000, I said. "I am not taking out a loan, and I am not unfreezing my credit." "Then you are killing us," she screamed. "No," I said. "I am letting you feel the consequences of your own math. However," I added, my voice cutting through her hysteria, "I will meet with you, one last time." "Okay," she breathed, sounding relieved. "Okay, come over. We can work this out. We can—" "I am not coming to the house," I interrupted. "And we are not meeting in the living room." Where then?" "My lawyer's office," I said. "Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. Bring all your financial records. Bring the mortgage papers. Bring everything." "Lawyer." She sounded horrified. "Violet, we don't need lawyers between family." "We do," I said. "Because this isn't a family meeting anymore. Mom, it is a settlement negotiation. I will text you the address," I said. "Don't be late. And bring Logan. If he doesn't show up, I hand the evidence of his referral fraud directly to the investigator calling him." I hung up before she could answer. I started the car. I didn't drive home. I drove to the office of a woman named Sarah Jenkins, no relation, a ruthless civil litigator Monica had recommended to me earlier that day. I had hoped I wouldn't need her. I had hoped the threat would be enough. But as I drove through the city, watching the lights blur past, I realized that threats only work on people who have something left to lose. My parents had lost their money, their judgment, and their morals. All they had left was their desperation. And desperation is dangerous. I parked the Porsche. I walked into the building. I wasn't the daughter anymore. I wasn't the sister. I was the plaintiff. I sat in the office of Sarah Jenkins, no relation. Just a grim coincidence of naming, and stared at the document on the mahogany desk. It was an identity theft affidavit. It was a standard government form, 5 pages of boxes and lines, but it felt heavier than a brick. Sarah was a woman who spoke in periods, not question marks. She was a civil litigator who specialized in family financial disputes, which meant she had seen the ugliest sides of human nature. "It is a binary choice, Violet," Sarah said, tapping her pen against the paper. "There is no middle ground here. Either you accept the debt as yours, which implies you authorized it, or you declare it fraudulent. If you declare it fraudulent, the bank will launch an investigation. They will trace the IP address. They will trace the transfer of funds, and they will refer the case to the district attorney." She looked at me over the rim of her glasses. "If you sign this, you are not just clearing your credit report, you are handing the police a roadmap to your brother." I looked at the pen. For 29 years, I had been trained to protect Logan. I had been trained to step back so he could step forward. I had been trained to be the cushion that softened his falls. "He stole $22,000, I said, my voice flat. "And he did it with my parents' help." "Then sign it," Sarah said, "and prepare yourself. The moment you file this, the bank becomes the predator, and your family becomes the prey. You are stepping out of the equation." I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I signed Violet Jenkins at the bottom of the page. The ink looked black and permanent. I prepared 2 envelopes that morning. The first was a thick manila envelope containing the signed affidavit and the police report I had filed an hour earlier. That one was for the bank. It was the truth. Naked and legal. The second envelope was for my family. It contained copies of the same documents, plus a printout of the credit line history showing every purchase Logan had made: bottle service, designer clothes, consulting fees to his friends. This was also the truth, but it was the kind of truth that acted as a mirror. Before I met them, I stopped by Monica's office. I needed to hear a voice that wasn't asking me for money. Monica saw the look on my face, the hollow, haunted look of someone who had just crossed a moral event horizon. "You feel guilty," she stated. It wasn't a question. "I am about to send my brother to court," I said. "Maybe prison. My parents are going to lose their minds." Monica stood up and walked around her desk. She put a hand on my shoulder. It was a rare gesture of physical comfort from her. "Violet, listen to me closely. You are not taking revenge. Revenge is active. Revenge is slashing tires or burning down a house. You aren't doing that. You are simply stepping out of the way of the consequences they created." She squeezed my shoulder. "You don't need to punish them," she said. "You just need to stop paying the price for their mistakes. There is a difference between being a sister and being a sacrifice." "They want to meet," I said. "One last time before the lawyers take over." "Go," Monica said. "But don't bring your checkbook. Bring your spine." I met them in a rented conference room at a hotel downtown. I refused to go to their house, and I refused to let them come to my apartment. I wanted neutral ground. I wanted a place where they couldn't scream without attracting security. They were already there when I arrived. My father looked 10 years older than he had a week ago. His skin was gray, and his suit looked like it was hanging on a wire frame. My mother was pale, her eyes red-rimmed and swollen. Logan sat between them. He wasn't wearing his founder hoodie today. He was wearing a collared shirt, looking small and terrified. I sat down at the opposite end of the long table. I placed the second envelope in front of me. "Thank you for coming," my father said, his voice raspy. He didn't sound angry anymore. He sounded desperate. That was worse. Anger I could fight. Desperation was sticky. It tried to pull you in. "Let's make this quick," I said. "I have a busy afternoon." "Violet," my mother began, her voice trembling. "We know you are angry. We know we made mistakes, but we are in a crisis, a real crisis." My father slid a piece of paper across the table. It was a fee agreement from a criminal defense firm. "This is what it costs," he said. "Just to keep Logan out of immediate trouble with the Attorney General, $10,000 for the retainer, $350 an hour after that. And that is just for the fraud investigation regarding the incubator. It doesn't even cover the civil suits from the people he recruited." I looked at the number. It was a lot of money, but it was less than the Porsche parked outside. "That looks expensive," I said aggressively. "We can't pay it," my father said. "You know we can't. The retirement account is drained. The HELOC is frozen because of the credit alert you put on the house address. We are stuck." "And," I asked. "And we need you," my mother cried out. "Violet, please. He is your brother. He is your blood. You can't just watch him get destroyed. If he gets a criminal record, his life is over. He will never get a job. He will never get a loan." "He already can't get a loan," I pointed out. "That is why he stole my identity." "It wasn't stealing," Logan interjected, his voice rising in that familiar whining cadence. "It was borrowing. I was going to pay it back. I have a plan. Why, I really do." He reached into his bag and pulled out a stapled document. He slid it toward me with a trembling hand. "Look," he said, "I talked to a debt consolidation officer. If we can consolidate the Amex debt and the other obligations into a single personal loan, the payments are manageable. I can get a job. I will work at Starbucks if I have to. I will pay the monthly installments. I promise." I didn't touch the paper. And I can't qualify for the consolidation loan," he admitted, looking at the table. "My credit is shot. But if you co-signed, just as a guarantor, you wouldn't have to pay anything. You just lend your name so I can get the approval. Then I pay it off. I fix everything." I stared at him. The audacity was breathtaking. After everything, after the lies, the theft, the gaslighting, he was asking for the exact same thing again. He wanted my name. He wanted my credit score. "You want me to co-sign," I repeated slowly. "You want me to put my name next to yours on a legal document. It is the only way to save the family," my mother pleaded. "Violet, be reasonable. If you do this, we can pay off the Amex. You can drop the fraud dispute. The police don't have to be involved. We handle it internally. We heal as a family." "Heal?" I looked at her. "Mom, you aren't asking to heal. You are asking me to infect myself to cure him. How can you be so cold?" She wept. "I changed your diapers. I raised you. Doesn't that mean anything?" "I am your daughter," I said, my voice shaking with a sudden surge of grief I hadn't expected. "I am your child, too. But for the last 3 years, you haven't treated me like a daughter. You have treated me like a hedge fund. You have treated me like a backup generator. You ignored my birthday, but you remembered my credit limit." "That is not true," my father protested weakly. "It is true," I snapped. "When you looked at me, you didn't see Violet. You saw an insurance policy. You saw a safety net for Logan. And now that the net is refusing to catch him, you are angry." "We aren't angry," Logan said. "We are just asking for a chance. Vi, please. If I can just get past this, if I can just clear this debt, I can start over. I have a new idea for a platform. It is strictly B2B. No crypto, no heavy overhead. I just need to survive this phase, and I will be a founder again. I know I have it in me." I looked at him, really looked at him, and I finally understood. He wasn't sorry. He wasn't scared of prison. He was terrified of being ordinary. He was an addict. He wasn't addicted to drugs or alcohol. He was addicted to the fantasy of being special. He was addicted to the title of founder. He was addicted to the idea that he was destined for greatness, and that the rules of math and law didn't apply to him because he was a visionary, and my parents were his enablers. They were providing the supply. "You don't want to be saved, Logan," I said softly. "You want to be reinstated." "I am an entrepreneur," he insisted, his eyes wild. "It is who I am." "No," I said. "You are unemployed, and you are a thief." I picked up the envelope I had brought. I slid it across the table. "I am not signing your loan," I said. "I am not co-signing anything, and I am not withdrawing the fraud dispute." "Violet, no," my mother gasped. Reaching for my hand, I pulled it away. "Open the envelope," I commanded. My father opened it. He pulled out the documents. He saw the affidavit. He saw the police report number. "You went to the police," he whispered, The color drained from his face completely. I had to, I said, because you didn't leave me a choice. You asked me to co-sign a loan today. You didn't ask 6 months ago. You just took it. I pointed at the evidence in his hands. You already used my name, Logan. You already made me a co-signer without my permission. You breached the contract of this family a long time ago. I am just enforcing the penalties. The room went silent. The air conditioning hummed, cold and indifferent. My parents looked at the papers. They looked at the timeline of the purchases I had included, bottle service, ski trips, designer sneakers. They saw, in black and white, what their retirement money and my stolen credit had actually bought. It hadn't bought a company. It hadn't bought software. It had bought an illusion. He lied to us, my father whispered, looking at Logan. You said the money was for servers. You said it was for developers. I had to network, Logan stammered, shrinking in his seat. You have to look successful to be successful. My mother put her head in her hands and began to sob. But this time, she wasn't crying for Logan. She was crying for the betrayal. She was crying because she finally realized that the golden boy was just gold-plated lead. I am done, I said, standing up. I am done being the bank. I am done being the shield. Violet, wait, my father said. He didn't demand. He didn't shout. He sounded broken. What happens now? Now, I said. We deal with reality. I looked at Logan. You need a lawyer, a real one, and you need to stop talking about startups and start thinking about plea deals. I looked at my parents. And you need to stop enabling him. If you give him another dime, if you mortgage the house to save him, you will lose everything, and I won't be there to bail you out. Tomorrow, I said, checking my watch. 10 a.m., my lawyer's office, Sarah Jenkins. I will have a document prepared. It outlines the conditions under which I will agree not to press for the maximum damages in civil court. I can't stop the criminal investigation that is out of my hands, but I can control whether I sue you for the equity in your home to recover my losses. Sue us, my mother whispered, horrified. I hope I don't have to, I said. But that depends on you. Bring the financial records, I said. All of them. No more secrets, no more plans, just the numbers. I walked to the door. Violet, Logan called out. I can fix this. I just need time. I turned back. He still didn't get it. He was drowning, and he was still trying to sell me water. You don't have time, Logan, I said. You have an indictment. I walked out of the conference room. I walked through the hotel lobby, past the tourists and the business travelers. I walked out into the cool Chicago air. I didn't feel happy. I didn't feel triumphant. My heart hurt. My family was collapsing in real time, imploding under the weight of their own lies. But as I walked toward my car, I realized something. I wasn't collapsing with them. I was standing on solid ground. I had built my life on bedrock, on work, on truth, on reality. They had built theirs on sand, and for the first time in 29 years, I wasn't jumping into the quicksand to save them. I was standing on the shore, watching. It was the hardest thing I had ever done, but it was the only thing that could save me. Tomorrow, I whispered to myself. Tomorrow we close the account. The conference room in Sarah Jenkins's law office was soundproof, but the silence inside was loud enough to shatter glass. The room was dominated by a long, oval table made of dark walnut. On one side sat my parents, Gary and Marianne, and my brother, Logan. They looked huddled together, a small island of denial. On the other side sat me, but I was not alone. To my right sat Sarah, my attorney. To my left sat Mr. Henderson, a fraud investigation specialist representing the bank that held the delinquent American Express business line. And at the far end of the table sat a woman named Claire Sterling, an internal auditor from the state's Consumer Protection Division who was looking into the Nexus Group. My parents had walked in 10 minutes ago expecting a family mediation. They thought we were going to cry, hug, and maybe sign a payment plan. When they saw the suits, Their faces went from hopeful to gray. "What is this?" my father asked, his voice trembling. "Who are these people? Violet?" "This is not a mediation, Dad," I said, my voice steady and cool. "This is a reconciliation of accounts." I stood up. I didn't need notes. The numbers were burned into my retinas. "For the last 3 years," I began, pacing slowly behind my chair, "we have lived in a fiction, a story where Logan is a budding genius and I am the invisible spectator. Today, we look at the raw data." I placed a single sheet of paper in the center of the table. "Exhibit A," I said. "The cash flow. From January 2 years ago to present," I recited, keeping my eyes on my mother. "Direct transfers from Gary and Marianne Jenkins to Logan Jenkins total $50,700. These were labeled as support. In reality, they were rent payments for an apartment he could not afford." My mother looked down at her hands. "Exhibit B," I continued. "The incubator fees, $45,000 paid to the Nexus Group, a pay-to-play scheme that provided no equity, no funding, and no accredited mentorship. You drained your savings to pay for a desk and a coffee machine." "We know this," Logan snapped, though he looked sweaty. "We discussed this. Why are you dragging it up in front of strangers?" "Because of Exhibit C," I said, turning to Mr. Henderson. Mr. Henderson cleared his throat. He opened a folder. "Mr. and Mrs. Jenkins, my name is Paul Henderson. I represent the fraud department. We have completed a preliminary review of the application for the business line of credit opened in the name of Violet Jenkins 6 months ago." My father went rigid. "The application was submitted digitally," Henderson said, his voice devoid of emotion. "The IP address used to submit the application traces back to a residential router at 42 Oak Creek Drive, my parents' home address. Furthermore," Henderson continued, "the contact email provided was a variation of Ms. Violet Jenkins's name, but the recovery phone number listed belongs to a Mr. Logan Jenkins. The physical card was mailed to your residence and activated via the same IP address." "It was a misunderstanding," my father blurted out, sweat beading on his forehead. "We had verbal permission. We were going to manage the account for her." "Did you have a power of attorney?" Sarah, my lawyer, asked sharply. "Did you have a signed affidavit authorizing you to use her Social Security number for credit inquiries?" "We are her parents," my mother cried out. "We don't need affidavits." "In the eyes of the law, Mrs. Jenkins," Sarah said, "you are strangers who committed identity theft, the penalty for which can include federal prison time." The room seemed to drop 20 degrees. "And finally," I said, drawing their attention back to me, "the motive. Why did you need $22,000 of my credit when you had already given him $50,000 of your own because of the lie?" I looked at Logan. "Tell them about the investors." Logan looked at the table, then at the window, then at his shoes. I was close. The Series A was just around the corner. I just needed to bridge the gap." "There was no Series A," I said, "and there were no investors, but there were victims." I nodded to Ms. Sterling at the end of the table. "Mr. Jenkins," Sterling said. She was sharp, terrifyingly professional. "We have obtained records from the Nexus Group servers before they were wiped. We found your email correspondence." Logan went white. "You weren't just a student, were you?" Sterling asked. "You were a recruiter. We have emails where you explicitly promised 3 other young entrepreneurs, including a Mr. Mark Davis, that if they signed up under your referral code, you could guarantee them funding meetings. You claimed to have insider access to venture capital." "I was just selling," Logan squeaked. "It is sales. You exaggerate a little." "You received a $500 commission for every person you tricked into paying the $5,000 entry fee," Sterling said. "That is not sales. Mr. Jenkins, that is operating a Ponzi scheme. And since you used the United States Postal Service to mail some of these contracts, it is also mail fraud." My mother let out a sound that was half gasp, half sob. "Logan, is this true?" You made money off your friends." Logan looked cornered. He looked at me with pure hatred. "You did this," he hissed. "You dug this up. You want to see me in jail. You are jealous because I have charisma, and you are just a calculator." "I am not jealous," I said quietly. "I am exhausted." "She wants to push her brother into prison," my father shouted, standing up, his face purple. "Is that what you want, Violet? You want to see your baby brother in handcuffs. You want to destroy this family over money." "I am not the one who destroyed this family." "Dad," I said, "you did. When you decided that his fantasy was worth more than my reality, you mortgaged your future. You stole my identity, and you turned your son into a criminal because you couldn't bear to tell him no." "So what do you want?" My mother wept. "Do you want blood?" "No," I said. "I want a divorce." "What?" she whispered. "I want a divorce from this dynamic," I said. "I want to be released from the role of the safety net." I slid a final document across the table. It was thick, stapled, and drafted by Sarah. "This is a settlement agreement," I said. "It has 3 conditions. If you sign it, I will not press civil charges for the identity theft, and I will ask the bank to consider a repayment plan rather than immediate prosecution, though I cannot control what the state investigator does regarding the incubator." My father looked at the papers. "What are the conditions?" "1," I said. "You, Gary, and Marianne will sign a notarized statement acknowledging the debt is yours and Logan's, releasing me from any liability. You will never ask me for money again, not for legal fees, not for retirement, not for a bailout." 2, I continued. "Logan will sign a cease and desist regarding my identity. He will surrender all administrative access to any accounts using the family name, and he will agree to a credit freeze that only I can unlock for the next 7 years. "And 3, my father asked, his voice hollow. 3, I said. "You stop the drip. You agree to terminate all automatic transfers to Logan. No more rent, no more allowance. If you want to give him money, you can. But it has to be reported to the bankruptcy court you are likely about to face. You have to stop feeding the delusion." "You are cutting him off," my mother sobbed. "He will be homeless. He can't survive out there. He is 26 years old." "Mom," I said. "He will survive, or he won't, but I won't be the one paying for his failures anymore." "I won't sign it," Logan said, crossing his arms. "I am not signing away my rights. I am a founder. I have prospects." "You don't have prospects." "Logan," I said. "You have an investigation file number." I looked at my watch. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "If you don't sign, Mr. Henderson files the official police report for identity theft at 10:30, and I file a civil suit for damages against Mom and Dad's house equity at 10:31. The silence returned. It was heavy, suffocating. My father looked at the bank representative. He looked at the state investigator. He looked at me. He realized, finally, that the family meeting power dynamic had shifted forever. He wasn't the patriarch anymore. He was a defendant. He picked up the pen. His hand was shaking so badly he could barely hold it. "Sign it, Logan," my father whispered. "Dad," Logan looked shocked. "Sign it," my father roared, slamming his hand on the table. "Do you see what is happening? It is over. The game is over." Logan flinched. He grabbed the pen. He signed. My mother signed, weeping silently onto the mahogany. My father signed last. Sarah took the documents. She checked the signatures. She nodded to me. "It is done," she said. But it wasn't quite done. There was one last knot to untie. Logan stood up. He looked at me, his eyes wet with tears of rage and humiliation. "You think you won," he spat. "You think you are so smart, but you don't know anything. I had investors. Violet. Real ones. They were just waiting for the market to turn. I was building something." "Stop it," I said. "Just stop lying. The papers are signed. There is no one left to impress." "I am not lying," he screamed. "Logan," I said, my voice soft. Who were they? Name one. Name one single investor who wasn't Mom, Dad, or a friend you tricked. He opened his mouth. He closed it. He looked at our parents, who were watching him with a desperate, heartbreaking hope that maybe, just maybe, I was wrong. But he couldn't do it. The silence stretched out, agonizing and absolute. There were no investors, he whispered. What? My mother breathed. Logan looked at her, and for the first time, the mask fully slipped. He didn't look like a CEO. He looked like a frightened child who had been playing dress-up for too long. I never had any investors, he admitted, his voice cracking. I needed you guys to keep believing in me. If I told you the truth, that I was just sitting in a co-working space drinking coffee and pretending to work, you would have stopped the money. You would have made me get a real job. He looked at my father. I just wanted you to be proud of me. I wanted to be the golden boy. So I acted the part. My mother let out a wail that I will never forget. It wasn't a scream of anger. It was the sound of a heart breaking. She realized that every sacrifice, every raided retirement fund, every lie they had told themselves, had been for a performance. They had bankrupted themselves for a play. My father sat back in his chair, staring at the ceiling, looking like a man whose soul had just evaporated. I am sorry, Logan wept. I am so sorry. I looked at them, the tableau of a family in ruins. I felt nothing, no joy, no vindication, just a profound, quiet lightness. The weight I had been carrying for 29 years, the weight of being the second choice, the backup plan, the invisible child was gone. I turned to Sarah. Thank you. I turned to my parents. They didn't look at me. They were too busy looking at the wreckage of their son. I am leaving now, I said. I walked out of the conference room. I walked down the long, carpeted hallway of the law firm. I took the elevator down to the lobby. I walked out the glass doors into the parking lot. The sun was shining. It was a bright, crisp Chicago day. I walked over to my Porsche. It was dusty. It had bird droppings on the windshield. It wasn't a magical chariot. It was just a car, a piece of metal and glass. I reached out and touched the cold, gentian blue metal of the roof. I didn't feel like a winner. Winning implies a competition, and I realized now that I had never been in a competition. I had been in a hostage situation. I opened the door and slid into the driver's seat. The leather creaked. I put the key in the ignition. The engine roared to life, a deep, throaty sound that felt real. I wasn't Violet the daughter, or Violet the sister, or Violet the ATM. I was just Violet. I put the car in gear. I didn't look back at the building where my family was finally facing the invoice for their favoritism. I checked my blind spot, signaled left, and pulled out onto the road. I had a lot of work to do, but for the first time in my life, the profit would be all mine. Thank you so much for listening to this story of Violet's journey to freedom. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from your car, your office, or maybe while cooking dinner? Please leave a comment below with your location and your thoughts on how Violet handled her family. And don't forget to subscribe to Maya Revenge Stories, like the video, and hit that hype button so we can share this story with even more people.